Here we are at lunchtime. Welcome, everyone. The market has pretty well continued on, as we talked about on Friday and on Sunday in our Nova Way presentation with the way the market was. We came off on the longer term, the Tankin on both the SPX and on the NASDAQ. And Apple has performed even better than what we imagined, so we're pretty grateful for that. But those moves were all mathematically very predictable, particularly the Apple. We went through that. I'm not going to spend too much time. We're visited on that. We've got a visitor here today, Julie, who does a lot of quant analysis and does some great stuff using optionality, which we're going to go through. But firstly, I want to go through on the S&P, what we did today. On Friday, we can remember what happened. Some of us took home, not many of us took home futures, some did, but mainly looking at cheap calls. While VIX was expensive relatively on Friday, it was still cheap given what it was, correct, right? So we turned around all day in here. We're going to look at the 5-minute and the 60-minute. So you look at 5-minute, you can see the churn, but really what it's doing is building energy in a flag. And on hourly, we came down and tested that channel, and look what we've done. The same thing on the way down. What's happening is the market is laden with bulls, as I've said, with newcomers that are getting just destroyed. So they're all bullish, all bearish, rationality's out the window. That's how crowds behave, right? The madness of crowds. So we see that, and from my point of view, we've been chopped around a little bit in here, make a handle, lose a handle, because that energy isn't coming across. When you just look at S&P. Now, if you look at our daily up here, remember what we went through in the market weekly? Look what it did. Pretty clinical, right? Now, let's have a quick look before we get Julie to chime in here. But we got more of the same. The rubbish, or they took out the trash again this morning. So a lot of stocks that you're familiar with got sold off hard. Now, quality in the small space is getting sold too, because remember, it's just fear selling, right? Or force selling from whatever reason. Also, there's still a little bit of tax selling going on. If you've had a good year, you want to get rid of something, you're selling it now. So we look at NASDAQ. Let's make it a little bit bigger on a 30-minute. Again, look at this. This is how we open. Look at this panic selling, panic buying. So you've got the forces at work are people still in that, oh, this isn't real, buy the dip, I got to average or I'm done. That's this one. This is panic here, it's the end of the world. And if you read our market weekly, the market talk, I tried to make the point, all this fear, it's not in the indexes. All of Europe was up other than Spain, and I think that was all. And from the US, the SPOOs were hardly down, right? So let's not get carried away with people that are hobbyists or this sort of thing on social media, things like Twitter. That's not the real world, right? So let's be real about that. So look at this energy. But when you get this sort of stuff, you have to go to a deeper look, okay? Then when we get on to, and not to say there's not good people on Twitter, I'm talking about your trolls and you can only go up, and whether they even have an account or whether they're a bot. So don't pay too much attention. So where did we lose all that? Russell's hiding behind SPOOs as it does in the real world. So look at Russell. This is exactly what we're talking about. So this was panic and overselling. We were talking about there's a lot of good stuff on sale. So for investors, as opposed to traders, great time to pick stuff up, right? But just bear in mind the market psychology. Now, I tried to make the point in the market talk that this, how do I put this nicely? But there's a lot of excuses out there. Rates and tapering, that's pretty well negligible unless you want it to be, right? we're hearing about all this talk about bonds, and bonds are still very cheap. And unless you're trading the 30-year, it's negligible anyway, as far as profit and loss for big guys, unless you're over leveraged or small guys. So let's look at perspective, and that's what people like Powell tried to say. Hey, and that so let's look at that. But look at this wick here, if you can see it. Is that big enough? Everyone see that okay? Look at that wick. So on that actually is telling you, yes, they've taken out the trash, but hey, come on, guys. Let's be realistic. So hard to look at this other than what it is. This is where Murray comes in. But you can see how overdone that was. Now, it would not surprise me, looking at the daily, that was an ABC correction, right? And we're going higher. And really, I just wanted to show you Bitcoin. So that shows you how much silliest can we see? So you can see what it did. We might have to go a little bit further out on this one. Let's go a little bit further out here. Look at what happened on Friday. Now, the closest resemblance we have to that, was it Friday or Saturday, is the Russell for us. But the Russell, there is some good stuff on it. So I don't want to overstate it, but I do kind of want to warn people from if they get caught up on a lot of this stuff on Twitters and Facebook, let alone CNBC. So try and be rational, and that's what's going on. One more chart. As you know, our big play was Apple, and it was we tried to stand out how we did it using the strips on call buying, and we used the technical base. Look how it opened up. So it went as high as $5. We took profit in here a little bit early, didn't get all that. But it wasn't unpredictable. There was a good chance that someone was going to upgrade that. Why? Because, yes, people got caught short, but a lot of people got caught long as well. So I don't want to talk like a conspiratist, but kind of what happened. Okay, so I'm going to pass this over to Julie, and she'll make more sense of what I'm saying there. So let me just bring her up, her screen. Just give me a sec. As you can see, I'm a little bit having a little trouble here trying to get to it. But let's bring this up. And just give me one sec. And I'm going to bring this street across. So right now, here we go. I've got to bring it over to this monitor, sorry. So I'm going to let Julie talk us through here. So Julie,
Okay, have you got it up? I can't see, Andrew.
Oh, you can't see that? So
just let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, so I can see it, so it's your screen. We
Okay, fantastic. Okay, good. So what would you like to talk about first? The ES? Since it's on the ES?
Yes, the ES, perhaps why, if you could show what I just showed there, how it was building that pennant, and it took so long, which was very choppy because of what happened on Friday, or I guess from Wednesday on last week, respecting those levels, and we took stuff on and off, right? So I think your gamma shows that pretty well.
Absolutely, yeah. On the ES gamma, I took the short-dated option gamma, and it made it a perfect shelf today. We opened, came up, tagged the lower end of that gamma area, flushed back down to the Globex open, and then big bull bar coming back in. We broke. We did not break any levels. The gap run was overnight for the intraday gap. Came in and closed the Globex gap, and big bull bar, that was your changeover, and it took a little bit of time to get that pennant, that wedge, to work itself out. But once it broke through your high gamma line, came
That's the
back,
bit that I
tested it.
find interesting. When it
Yeah, it
broke
just,
that gamma line and then that stayed in control, and it took a
it
while to
did.
work through it,
It
and then
did. It
finally
did.
broke higher. When
It chopped.
outside of that, right, it looked like it would break down. I mean, if I look at the Apple chart, I can see who the daddy was. Whether the
This
daddy or
red
mummy, I got
line,
to say now. But
this red line right here is a statistical level. It's the second standard deviation of the daily. So the algos parked themselves on it, and so it sort of got pinned between this gamma and the second standard deviation. Sort of walked right up and down in there chopping until it finally broke. Once we got the breakout of the second standard deviation, there was your go bar.
right, and if we look back on Friday, those two, that was actually the level. If we remember the jobs report, so it went up
Hmm.
initially in the jobs report because the NFP, the headline number was lower than expected. Therefore, didn't have to have a rush to taper, etc. Raise rates, didn't have to
Yeah.
increase taper. Sorry. Um, then, not long after that, Bullard comes out. We can't raise rates fast enough, right? And so we started selling, and then we sold almost down to that. It looks like your 2D on the daily, and then of course the floodgates open when numbers started to drop that were very more, I guess, much more. I don't want to use the word hawkish, but more inflationary, perhaps stronger growth, which was the services number, and then factory, and then of course it all started to feed on itself. Rest of the day. And what's interesting on your gamma level there, that's kind of right around where the work done was done before it collapsed. So that explains that pretty nicely, I think. And remember,
Well,
gamma
yeah,
is
they
used for
definitely.
hedging and
Yeah.
speculating, etc.
Well, for short term, yeah, day trader level, I like the short term expiries. They do act as support resistance, and you can get a good bounce or break off these levels. Um, yeah, but
So,
this
well, the
big
other thing I've
bull bar
noticed,
here.
just looking at it, sorry to interrupt, Julie, but that middle histogram you got there, I'm seeing some positive divergence there between the highs and the lows. That's
Well,
interesting to
the
look at too. What's that representing?
well, that's a good question. This is actually telling us that we're going long vol long, which is what we've been in for the last couple of months,
Okay.
really since September. Usually, when you get long vol, you go short.
Right,
But
right.
we're
That's why
breaking
that
that
gives you
pattern.
that positive divergence.
This is a long vol long trade showing the institutional buying in here.
Right.
They're not through letting these equities off the leaderboard.
Interesting.
And the ES really was showing the strength here, more so than the NQ. The YM, of course, just gangbusters shot
Right,
up.
right. That's just
I
huge
mean,
stocks, yeah.
just amazing. We're in the tails, sort
Yeah,
of
I've been
flattened out at the tail,
consuming big
but we're
Apple.
still,
Need to do
yeah,
that.
big breakout today in the YM. Russell finally caught on board also. It got up to the second standard deviation and just sort of flattened out. And it can just walk that line and go
And actually, when
flat.
Alex comes on, I'm interested to see because he knows some of these stocks a bit better than Mahdavi's our
Yes,
more futures
right,
trader.
right.
So
But
certain
the
stocks caught a bid. Now, and obviously we talked about taking out the trash, but then someone picked it up. So I'm interested to hear what that is. But before we get to that, I'm interested to hear what yourself and Mahdavi saw on Nasdaq futures because I noticed
okay,
the gamma lines, and then Mahdavi was trading it. So,
it
Mahdavi,
was it.
Mahdavi, if you could just tell us a
Yeah,
little about what you saw on
well,
futures.
I thought we were going to get an extension on Friday on the Nasdaq. It started out a little bit strong in the morning, then we dropped off. Then there was some news out, and it's just been going really choppy back and forth. Weak, too strong, and really just wiping out the bids, the shorts and the longs. Now we're going to see for the close if we're going to catch any direction here. It looks like we're picking up, going to close strong, but it's not really pushing like the other indexes, like the Russell and Spiders over here. So I still got questions on it. I cleared out. I took some of my losses on the short side. Still have a couple of contracts. Just watching it right now and see if we do finally show that breakthrough. But I went long to Russell and see if the Russell could break the highs over here and see what happens for the close. If this is going to be a real rally or they're going to fade it towards the close.
Yeah, we've sort of flattened out at the daily one. This is the first standard deviation. You're going to need to hump over the one to have any chance at all for a rally up. The NASDAQ has not been leading today. Conversely, like you said, the Dow and the E-mini were the big breakout leaders. ES looks like it's going to continue rallying, trying to get it to the 3 and that prior high maybe. But we're in positive linear regression. You see the path is green. So I just wait for the momentum to catch and then take that ride to the next level, which is that third standard deviation. But the NASDAQ, definitely, we are pancaked in on these gamma lines. We've got the short-term gamma and the end of the month gamma to the downside, pinning the low. But yeah,
Actually,
I
mentioning that, sorry to interrupt, but we've actually just come back to test that breakdown level, which Spoos got through and went up. No doubt
yeah
that's a lot to do. I did see a lot of, I haven't watched it to be honest right now because I've been trading natural gas and oil. To natural gas a little bit more today with that nice sell-off continuating. Um, but I did notice later all the chips were getting sold off earlier. So I'm guessing that's a lot of, well, not guessing, but that's a lot of that move down, right? Versus the S&P and Tesla, I saw broke $1,000, so that would have got a bit of panic selling or stock selling
yeah. So
versus.
yeah, just matching your stocks to go with the futures that are moving is the play. I mean, obviously, we've got the downside volatility, which is conducive for the long rally.
Right, I'm actually
So
visiting lows right now as we speak. The
you,
Q's VIX and also the Spoos VIX.
yeah,
Um,
this is volatility right here, showing
right,
that the yeah,
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 I like that histogram. That's really cool.
cool.
Alex, do you want to chime in with because he was trading more stocks than what we were today. What did you see, man?
Sure. Yeah, I've been trading futures and stocks a bit, mostly S&P futures and a couple individual shares. But underneath the hood of the Nasdaq, there's a lot of green. Weakest stock is Moderna, followed by AMD and Nvidia,
Oh,
semis
Moderna,
and
I
and
forgot about that one. Yeah, I did. Yeah, that vaccine, huh?
yeah, and we see a little bit of a steepening in the yield curve today. So some of these rate sensitive stocks are a little bit more out of favor than they were last week when there was a flight to panic bid in some of these longer dated maturities. So seeing some pressure in the small to mid cap, high beta growth stocks. It's not evenly distributed though. Some of them are getting a nice bid up, and some of them are getting absolutely sold off. So it's a little bit of dispersion underneath the surface. For me, I'm really looking at the late cycle plays that I think are probably going to benefit into 2022. So I've been adding some JP Morgan as one of those late cycle plays today, and that's something that I plan to hold for a little while. And then S&P taking a little bit of profit into this level, but I've got some runners on too. I was in this since Friday. So I got in just above 4,500 as a bit of a high risk, high reward swing with a tight stop below. And it's worked out so far, but having captured almost 100 handles, I'm taking just a little bit off.
Yeah, that was a nice move we all did on Friday there on the Spoos and Apple and a few others. And when you're buying in that, that's what for those not familiar with Murray math and so basically the clouds, lower oversold percentage with chance that once stays right the night. S&P was chopping like a madman there for a bit.
Yes.
Hmm.
So the short-term traders get chopped up in that. I mean, the
They
long-term
do.
do like us
Yeah.
because we're kind of in the middle, I guess. I take different views on what the market risk is telling me. But in that, I don't hold it for too long because I'm uncertain. And there's nothing wrong with being uncertain. If you're,
Yeah.
you're not God, as we say. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
you don't know what's happening in the future. So just
Hmm.
always
Hmm.
respect that. And
Well,
like
especially when you get a 2 hour consolidation. Yeah.
right, so you got to have a good plan. And Alex made a good point. J.P. Morgan, they pay a dividend. That's a big thing when the market's
Hmm.
uncertain. And I was kind of making a little light of rates and all that, but it does
Hmm.
matter the velocity of it. And another thing that Alex did a great job last week of pointing out the return to. Firstly, we saw safe haven buying in the yen and the Swiss franc, and then we saw it in the U.S. long bond, with the 30-year, which is significant. Today, that came off. They sold those two currencies and went back more towards the commodity currencies, and also sold the long end there. And of course, we saw some quality stock buying.
And crude just keeps climbing.
Yeah, so that's an interesting factor there. They've really stuffed that up. It would be the nicest way I could say it politically for the danger that could happen. We did see the Saudis raise price to the US on the weekend. Really, that's nothing of importance given we produce here, one of the biggest producers in the world.
Crude,
That's a
crude just hit its
bias, I guess. But that's
crude
also
just
a. Sorry to interrupt, Julie.
crude just broke out of its 1 hour IB and hit the daily second
So let's
standard
have a look.
deviation.
Let me bring that up for you. I gotta hit that. Hang on. Find my cursor. There we are.
Just got a go green on crude at the second standard deviation.
Well,
This
let's look at that on how they're trading the pit. Yeah, definitely second PDA, but these lows. So this is just old school. A lot of in the S&P and natural gas. We'll look at that real quickly. But you can see it failed to break down more. Just a fast minute. But look what this is 5 minutes. It's pretty well been bid all day, as Julie's saying. Hit when it hit the United States. But look at more on a longer spread. Sorry, you can see the constant since that down there in the S&P. Now go back to oil, almost the same, right? So you could almost go back to that risk on, risk off, risk on, risk off sort of thing going on. We got all my stock charts in top of my as we're going through. So I want to look at an hourly on crude.
okay.
And isn't that a picture there? So if we think just the same pattern, A, B, C, keep it simple. That was the panic sell. We saw that in Russell today. That was after OPEC, Biden, all that good stuff. We came down after that, A, B, held the clouds, and we've been running since. So remember the bigger players, meaning your VTOLs and Trafigura, and meaning your bigger oil players, and then you've obviously got your producers. They're not looking at what it does in 5 or 10 minutes, right? So
Yeah.
nice there. Look what happens we get through this, which is what we're challenging right now. So if that's the case, this becomes a big flat top triangle. All that means is just think of charts what they're telling you. That means there's someone selling here. Okay, 68, 69, that's an options level. And if we look at our daily, where have I got daily high? We really did mess these charts up here. So here's our daily oil. Can everyone see this okay?
I don't see it. I can't see your chart, so I'm
Are you
sorry.
streaming right now?
We can't see what you're doing,
Yeah,
Andrew.
so we'll see this later on the YouTube. So I'll pop that in a minute, but I just got to change from Julie's stream. So I'm going to show you this daily. That's a shame we can't do that on the one. Next time we will. But I am going to. Have you anything else you want to show us, Julie?
Well, on crude,
Yeah.
we're at both a Globex level as well as a daily level, a confluence here.
Right.
So this might pull back a little bit. it's a confluence of a Globex level and a daily.
Actually,
But,
that's right. That's exactly where that hourly I was just talking about, and I'll bring that up in
so,
a sec.
so if we keep breaking out, then that's really bullish
Right,
because it's
right.
not, yeah.
So if you look at the curve, remember you had an insane curve. So we're very high in the front end with all the speculation, lower out the back, backwardation.
The only thing I don't like is the volatility is coming off.
It is, but it's giving you positive divergence, which is the same thing we saw in the stock market.
I
That's
know, but
just
the
trying to
equities,
risk off.
crude doesn't normally do that though. Give you a
No, but
long on a low ball.
so crude, what happens to crude is 80% of the time, it's boring old crude traders, producers, physical. Then when it really starts ramping, remember when it hit 80? Oh, we're going to 100. Remember when we
Hmm.
hit 0? Oh, we
Yeah,
tested
those
it and
were
then
the
it hits
days.
it again.
Those were the days.
Right. So the
Oh my
people that are
God.
in that shouldn't be in it. Natural gas is the best example. I can't,
Yeah.
and me and a lot of the other natural gas traders, we couldn't have believed the abuse. That's what I'm kind of making fun of Twitter, but I'm not. These people come out of the woodwork. You're talking about the end of the world. This thing's going to $100. At the end of the day, and that's the title of this week's market talk, was the rubber's got to meet the road. But if you apply what happens to these commodities to stocks, it's all the same.
Well, here's a look of, I don't know if you're still looking at my screen. Are
Yeah,
you?
we're looking at yours.
Okay.
So what I'll
Well, the
do is,
volat,
after we'll go a little bit, then we'll talk. I'll bring up my screen so we can talk about that. I'm so used to me seeing it, I forget what you guys are seeing.
I'm sorry, I couldn't see your screen at all.
No, because
And
I wasn't able to. Yeah,
but usually when the volatility rises in crude, that's when you want those sweet sell-offs.
right.
But when it rolls over the volatility, that's sort of like momentum, but it kind of
Well, that's what I like. That's positive
tailed off,
divergence, right?
but there's really no push anymore for that short. So that allowed the long to come in when that low volatility came in. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be a long trade necessarily. You have to have the upward thrust to get that long trade going. So, especially in a
Well, yeah. So your spreads. So what
supply demand market.
volatility is picking up? Your spreads are widening,
Yeah.
and that happens as we go up and as we go down. I mean, there's
But
absolutely
now we're moving back down in the volatility. So I'm not looking really for any more longs, is what I'm trying to say.
right. Not on that basis, no.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but
yeah,
he's
yeah.
saying in the positive divergence. If you go right back to the start of that. So let's we're just going to take a break here, and we'll come back,
Sure.
and I'm going to actually share my charts that I was talking about to the
Good.
viewers so you guys can all talk about it. And I'm going to make coffee and all that sort of stuff while we're doing that. So I'd love to hear more from Julian Alex on that and Mahdavi on what he's seeing in because Mahdavi trades much more. I'm aggressive in a couple of things I trade, but he's got a great hand on that aggressive trading right when fear and greed kind of enters it because he's great reader reading the market maker box on that.
Right.
So
Uh,
just give me a sec, and we'll be back in a few.